Hi everybody, welcome back to 100% Mag. So yesterday, of course, we seen some massive news on the Newcastle United takeover, on the NUFC takeover, as it trends on Twitter, and it's trending today as well on Twitter still, and it's probably going to be trending until this takeover is finally done and dusted, be it if the takeover goes in our favour or if it goes in the favour of everybody against it. So, of course, we're going to talk about the takeover in the video today. We're going to also talk about, of course, the match coming up against West Ham as well. And I have put the link in the chat, so if anybody wants to come on and have their say on the latest news going around about the takeover as well, you can come on. Don't be afraid to come on and have your say. You're more than welcome to. And of course, let's have a quick look, of course, at what was said yesterday on the takeover front. So we'll look at, of course, the first bit of news which come out, which was from Craig Hope. We'll have a look at that. And of course, that was the news there. And it was, of course, Craig Hope putting out an article talking about, of course, the news of Mike Ashley closing one of the shops, which, of course, was the shop on the side of course, the Gallagher end at St James's Park. And, of course, he's made all the staff redundant. And he has said that, of course, informing them that the club's proposed new owners do not wish to keep them, of course, with the Saudi deal subject to arbitrations. And, of course, Castro set to be the new kit supplier and will restock the furbished store, which, of course, that's the news from Craig Hope on that one. And, of course, there's the other bit of news which came out, which was again Craig Hope, and he was, of course, saying this time about, of course, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman urging, of course, Boris Johnson to intervene in the Saudi takeover of NUFC. MBS's message, of course, read, we expect Premier League to reconsider and correct its wrong conclusion. Johnson asked senior aide to investigate, which was, of course, the Lord from Whitehall, which he sent to go and, of course, talk with the Premier League. And, of course, Oliver Dowden as well did say that PIF and MBS were separate entities and were not the same entity. So MBS would not have to sit at owner and directors test for PIF to take over the club. And, of course, we'll have a look at the news coming out from, of course, Andy Musgrove at the Chronicle as well, who also came out with an article, and that was, of course, the new documents that the government felt a decision on the NUFC takeover was just hours away in June of 2020. Emails show the Premier League admit the proposed deal had left them in new territory, which, of course, that right there, the new documents, and of course, saying that we're just hours away from getting the takeover back in June. Now, if everybody remembers rightly, Gary Hoffman actually started his job on the 1st of June for the Premier League. And of course, Richard Keys, old Hairy Hands Keys, was bragging all over BN Sports, remember, on a broadcast of theirs, that, of course, of their relationship, the two relationships between Gary Hoffman and Richard Keys. And of course, he was pretty happy about Richard Keys, of course, was very happy about Gary Hoffman taking the role at the Premier League. And of course, we all know that that's had some sort of effect on how long it's taken for this takeover to go through. But, you know, my take on this news will start off with, of course, the talk about the shop. My take on that is basic, right to the point, is that obviously the new owners wouldn't be able to take on the staff anyway, because obviously the staff are employees of Sports Direct, being that, of course, we all know the club shop changed hands from being owned by Newcastle United into the hands of course, Mike Ashley, which he turned the club shop into a Sports Direct shop. If anybody ever went in there to get a shirt or anything, you know, there was a lot of Newcastle fans that were coming out and saying, look at this receipt, it's got Sports Direct on the receipt, it's got Shirebrook as the headquarters. You know, it wasn't a Newcastle United shop, and it hadn't been for quite some time, you know, because Mike Ashley took over, and he obviously seen that as a way to be able to take the profits from the merchandise being sold in the shop without it showing up on the Newcastle United books. And, you know, in a way, it's good that it's now sold. It means that the club's going to get some of the money back off that merchandise that does get sold in the shop. Obviously, we'll get that back into the club. And then, of course, touching on the talk from Craig Hope, talking about, of course, MBS reaching out to the government, of course, for the takeover to be put through, because they were talking about the fact that Anglo and Saudi relations would get damaged if this takeover didn't get put through. MBS was very angry that the Premier League were coming at him and saying that, you know, you're the same entity, you're both the same, you've got to sit the test, even though there was already evidence handed in, and enough evidence handed in to prove that they were separate entities. Oliver Dowden, like I say, the cultural secretary for, of course, our government, came out and even said to the Premier League, you know, they're separate entities. Just let it go. Let the takeover go through. You know, but the Premier League didn't want that, and that's why we're in arbitration at this moment in time. But, you know, at the end of the day, eventually the takeover is going to go through. It's not a matter of if anymore, it's a matter of when. And, you know, it's only a matter of months that it could be. You know, we just got to wait, see what happens. But it's definitely going through in my eyes. There's no way now that the Premier League can say no, especially after what's been coming out in the last couple of days. Well, yesterday, and there's some stuff still coming out today, you know, and it's still trending very high on Twitter as well. So, you know, there's no way the Premier League can turn it down now. But it's looking good. It's looking positive forward, and that's what we want. You know, we want that takeover, because that's the only way we're going to be able to progress forward as a club. But let's get on to, of course, the news about the game coming up against West Ham. Let's talk about that. Right. The game against West Ham coming up, of course. We're going into that game, and we're coming into that game on a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday against the Hammers. And of course, as we all know, West Ham are doing really, really well at the moment. They're quite high. They're coming into it wanting to fight for a place in Europe. We're coming into it wanting to stay up in the Premier League. And of course, following on from a 2-0 success down at the London Stadium at the beginning of the season, of course, that game when Jeff Hendrick played his socks off And to be honest, the only game Jeff Hendrick played his socks off this season in as well. So if you're a gambling person, put your money on Jeff Hendrick to probably put in a good game if he is playing, because it seems to be the only team that he can actually play against. But following on from that, we do have the opportunity of registering a third double win in the Premier League, having, of course, taken 6 points off of Everton and Burnley. And, of course, after that victory, Turf Moor, Steve Bruce's side have the opportunity of posting successive wins for the first time in 2021. And, of course, in Newcastle are unbeaten at home in our last 4 outings, although winning just one of those against Southampton in February. Since then, we've drew with Wolves, Villa and Spurs, coming from behind to claim a point in the closing stages of the latter 2 games. Newcastle have never drawn 4 successive Premier League home games. And of course, talking about the team going into the game, we'll talk about, of course, West Ham's team first. And then we'll talk about Newcastle. Declan Rice, Mikel Antonio are both injured, so they're not going to be able to show up in that game, while News is away on the availability of Aaron Cresswell, Ogbonna, Lanzini, Daniel Raldolph, and of course Yarmolenko as well. In 2021, the Hammers have won at Everton, Palace, Villa, and Wolves, drawing at, of course, Fulham. Their 2 away losses were in Manchester. Man United loanee Jesse Lingard has scored 8 times in 9 starts for West Ham since arriving in January, including 1 or more in each of their last 4 games. 4 previous career appearances against Newcastle for the Red Devils brought him 1 goal at the Gallagher ending back in 2016. Of course, the referee for the game is going to be none other than Kevin Friend, only the 2nd time in the middle for a game involving Newcastle this season, following on from the 3-0 defeat against Brighton at home. Of course, Simon Hooper is going to be on 4. And of course, we have the previous meetings in the Premier League era. Of course, last season we drew 2-2 with them, with Almiron and Shelby scoring the goals. The previous season before that was, of course, a 3-0 defeat. And, of course, the previous 3 seasons before that were wins, with the most recent win, of course, coming back in this 17-18 season with Joselu, Clark and Mitrovic scoring in a 3-0 game. And of course, if we win this game as well, it does give we 3 points, and we're currently sitting on 32. I believe we're 6 points, 6 points apart from Fulham. So it's going to be hopefully a good game forward, and hopefully we can push up even further away from that relegation zone. That would have give we exactly 34 points, and that could take up to maybe about 16th, 15th place, or depending on goal difference. Of course, we're on minus 19, and Brighton's minus 5, who are in 15th place. Burnley are on minus 17 on goal difference, who are in 16th place. So we do have a chance to possibly make it up higher than we are at the moment in the league, but we'll have to wait and see what happens moving forward. We've got a comment here as well. Do you think the takeover will go through from a neutral perspective, not as a fan? From a neutral perspective, I really do think it will go through, considering what's been said yesterday, from what's come out between Craig Hope and Andy Musgrove, and what's been said before them reports have come out. I really do think we've got a very good chance of it going through. You know, I was just talking on Twitter to somebody earlier on, and of course, Toon United, I believe he was called on Twitter. I was talking to him earlier on, and he was discussing how Crystal Palace have Delaware company owning them. And of course, in Delaware, as everybody knows, Delaware companies don't have to literally say who is buying the club or that. They don't have to give any information over because that's Delaware law. They're not permitted to do so. And of course, if the Saudi law is exactly the same as Delaware law, then by rights, the Saudis don't have to justify who is buying Newcastle United. And if that is the case, then the Premier League have no choice but to put through Newcastle United's takeover. That is my take on it. There's a lot of other people's takes on it as well, but that's my take on it. And with that, I think we definitely could get the takeover coming through. So good question there. Thank you for putting that in, Matic. And of course, there's Matic as well. Again, what sort of timeline do you think we're looking at here? Are we talking weeks or months, and months nearing the end of summer? I couldn't tell you that, to be honest, mate, because I'm just a fan, like everybody else. I don't have an inside track on what's going on at the club. I don't have me finger on the pulse. So, I've heard news from the Football Insider on Twitter saying that we could be seeing the conclusion of arbitration by, the summer. If that is the case, then absolutely fantastic. But with what news has come out yesterday and what news is still coming out, I think we could maybe see it sooner than that. So, it's all wait and see at the moment for, us fans. It's just a matter of waiting and hoping, and seeing what happens. But again, another good question by you there. But, like I say, I just wanted to make a video to come on today, talk about my thoughts on the recent news that's come out from Craig Hope and Andy Musgrove. The news talking about, of course, MBS wanting Boris Johnson to intervene and make sure that the takeover definitely goes through, because Anglo and Saudi relations would be affected and would be damaged if it wasn't to go through, which is full. It's absolutely right at the end of the day, because the United Kingdom, our country, put so much money into Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia put so much money into us, buying weapons and arms and all sorts of different stuff, so that kind of relationship, you don't want to see that being damaged. And, the Premier League are willing to destroy countries' relationships that have been going for so long just to protect a select few at the top of a table. Is it worth it? To them, it is. To everybody else, it isn't. And that is playing down what the Premier League is always about. They're a corrupt bunch, and we've known it all along. You're just getting to see it now, publicly displayed in front of everybody what has been going on all the time at the Premier League. And eventually, it's going to be fully aired there for everybody to see. We're just seeing tidbits of it, but, we're going to finally be able to see even more than that, because hopefully, over time, more news will come out about what has been going on with our takeover, what's been going on with the Premier League in a whole since its, creation back in '92. So it's all just a matter of waiting and seeing what happens and watching it all unfold and enjoying every single minute of it. And for one, as a Newcastle United fan, can't wait for this takeover to happen. We so rightfully deserve it. 14 years we've been under the oppressed thumb of Mike Ashley and under the oppressed thumb of everybody that's been against Newcastle United and everybody that doesn't want the North East to succeed and have investment. This isn't just about football, neither. This isn't just about football, this Saudi takeover. This Saudi takeover, brings money into the area, into an area that is in much need of investment. I've talked about it on Twitter. You know, I put a post out about it yesterday. You know, there's people laughing at the northeast of England. And there's so many people out there right now, you know, like myself, suffering with mental health problems because somebody down the south wants to keep their little piece of the pie, you know, and that's just wrong. It's always going to be that way. Unfortunately, that's life at the end of the day. But, you know, it's so wrong that the Northeast shouldn't be allowed investment because somebody else has a problem against it. Do they have a problem, you know, with Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury going to fight in Saudi Arabia? No. Do they have a problem with the Saudis doing the F1? No. Do they have a problem with anything else involving the Saudis, like them buying shares in Disney? No. Did they have a problem with Newcastle United being bought by the Saudis? Yes. And why did they have a problem about Newcastle United being bought by the Saudis? Because they don't want to see Newcastle succeed. They don't want to see the Northeast succeed. And they don't like their money being taken away from the South. And it's always been that case. And it's always going to be that case. But whether they like it or not, this takeover is going through. And they can like it or lump it. But it's going through. And Newcastle will return to where we once were when we were battling Man United in the 90s when nobody else would and nobody else had the guts to do so. And we fully deserve it. For the past 14 years, we have been under the oppressed thumb of Mike Ashley. But literally, this news is so good to hear this news coming out. And all I'm going to say is Nick DeMarco is working hard on it. If you've seen his posts on Twitter, you know, yesterday he put out a post on Twitter and he was saying if he had to be chained to his desk, then he might as well say a save view. And that means to me, you know, if you read between the lines on that post, that guy is working his absolute socks off for Newcastle United to get what we so rightfully deserve, what we should have had last summer, but we didn't get because so many people were against Newcastle, were against us and this region getting investment that is so rightfully needed. But I'd like to thank everybody who has tuned in for this live stream. I'd like to thank everybody as well who will watch on the replay. If you can put a like on the video, that would be absolutely amazing. If you could also as well put a subscribe on if you're new or if you haven't done it yet, as I'm on the road to 500 subscribers, and hopefully we'll get that takeover soon. However, lads.